English translation, 135th contact, Thursday, 9th October, 1980, 1944 HRS.
This is but a short visit, Quetzal, if you want to go again before I am actually right there.
I have only taken a short walk and want to end it now. Minara waits for me a few hundred meters away with a herd of cows. We also have our ship in the vicinity there.
Oh, I see. Then you are probably the reason why the cattle are so restless up there on the southeastern slope of the forest.
That may very well be because Minara is with the cows, which she is fond of, and with which she is gladly occupied.
That too. Then be careful, however, when you go up there because Engelbert waits not too far from that place in his car. Your silvery rain cloak is not very good either, despite this rainy darkness.
That is of correctness, but I will be directed according to your words.
You are both incorrigible.
Then I will go now. Until we meet again.
Take care, and greet Minara for me.
I will do that.
Voom, and away he goes. Quetzal is quite extensive, however, in disembarking.
Certainly, but now listen to what I have to tell you, because I have a lot of work to do in the next few hours, so I only have a short time to talk today.
Your voice sounds so strange, as if something dreadful will happen again. I know this tone of yours already too well.
Certainly, it is as you say. But surely you have already calculated these coming events long ago.
Unfortunately, I could not deal with the calculations lately for psychological reasons, so I do not know what events should now fall upon the Earth again, or upon any part of it.
By way of insinuation, we once talked about this.
But I do not remember at the moment.
Al-Isnam-i.
Al-Asnam, Al-Asnam. Oh yes, that is the city in Algeria, which should be destroyed by at least 80% as a result of an earthquake, I think, if I remember correctly. This should be in the autumn of this year?
Certainly. Tomorrow, during the midday hours, the inevitable will be fulfilled.
And now you go back to the kidneys. I understand. It hits me again and again, even though I am actually far from the events. And when I consider that the main part of the people of the earth bears the guilt for these things, I could explode in anger. If I remember correctly, then it will crash again tomorrow so hard that roughly 100,000 human beings will die within just 30 seconds.
Unfortunately, that is the truth. It will be one of the strongest quakes to shake Algeria, as only seldom before.
That I do not know, but it will certainly be the case if you say so.
And yet, the Earth humans will not become more thoughtful, especially those who are truly to blame, namely the scientists and those in power.
They deny their guilt, that is quite clear. They vehemently advocate the crazy assertion that it concerns purely natural processes. Only in Japan the scientists seem to have become smarter, at least with regard to the whole climate change and the resulting air and land pollution.
That is well known to me.
And how does it stand with Iraq and Iran, which bloodily fight each other?
This war between brothers will continue even further with unabated violence, and will throw the whole world into a very bad crisis. And as I already told you before, there will be no real winner upon completion of the war, and in later years, more murderous and destructive wars will take place in Iraq by the fault of the Americans and the Iraqi dictator.
I know that, but could not you also tell me something about the other upcoming events?
Today, the time is not sufficient, but I do want to inform you about the other events that are coming within the course of next week.
That is dear of you.
Good. Then I shall now explain the following to you. We have found that some of the group members are still of the wrong opinion that they can continue in their old and often deplorable errors at their own discretion. And they are still of the wrong opinion that we would watch these wrongdoings idly. but they are greatly mistaken about this. Therefore, I must urgently explain that we can no longer make ourselves uncertain in any manner, and that we can no longer exercise leniency. Our regulation is given that every single group member residing in the center is to be intensively involved in the learning study, and to pursue this study in cooperation with all who are present and all resident group members. We can, under no circumstances, accept that a group member separates and wants to pursue a worthless individual study. Only absences from the center, necessary and urgent work, and illnesses may be accepted as absences from the group study. But because this rule already has tough expectations, it has become imperative that we have early and ongoing tests with individual evaluations for each of the subjects to be learned. And on the 18th of October, so in 10 days, we are already calling for a test for every single group member in reference to the knowledge and personal exercises of the meditation. This form of test also applies to the law of love, which the group members presently have in the study, and this test will be scheduled either for the end of October or the beginning of November. The test to come will be carried out with values in their results, such that at the end of the 12 months, averages can be calculated. For this, a minimum tolerance level for the values will be laid down in numerical points, from which the interests, efforts, and initiatives of each group member in reference to the study can be calculated. Anyone who falls short of the values of the minimum tolerance level must be excluded from the core group and its interests, without the possibility of a return to the core group. A repetition of a previous test, which is scheduled by us in each case for the various subjects, can take place under no circumstances, so an already calculated value of a completed test is permanent.
That is certainly clear enough. But explain to me again, who in this particular case is being addressed by your words? That certain group members have already separated from the study.
On the one hand, I spoke primarily of Connie, who has completely departed from the group study, but on the other hand, also of Ava and your wife, who repeatedly want to stay away from the group studies for futile reasons, with particular attention being given to your wife with her stubbornness and grumbling, while Eva temporarily shows a certain apathy when she is tired. In other matters, several group members do not strive intensively enough with the necessary memory repetitions, as defined by us in condition. It must be said, however, that we cannot take their wrongdoings and negligence any more, as they cannot be excluded from the enlargement of the meditation, which should be carried out starting from November. Urgently, you should once again suggest to all that they learn the necessary basic lessons in terms of the meditation and the law of love, in such a manner that they can flawlessly repeat these until the test. An assessment will occur from this, just like from the test questions.
The various excuses are always that they cannot memorize because they have no memory.
We already talked about this once, and you know that this cannot be accepted by us because everything is just a mistaken idea and imagination, as we have already explained. And do not forget for the tests that except for Guido, all others are to be included and tested, not just those group members who reside in the center. In the particular case of Madeline and Ida, they should strive around the teaching in a more concentrative manner, which is urgently needed for them. In particular, Madeline has great learning difficulties because she focuses too little. It would be appropriate that you teach her separately every day for about 30 minutes, so that she can also obtain the necessary knowledge. She is indeed very willing and interested to learn, but her will is not concentrated in such a way that she can take the necessary initiative for this. But for this additional work, you certainly need some more time, as I know, because you have other urgent work to do. For this reason, I would like it to be that you take the date of the 15th of October to begin to deal with this additional task. The same date should also apply to her meditation, since she believes that she can exclude herself completely, or occasionally at her own discretion from the group lessons. In addition, it is also an urgent necessity that Margaret and Dorrit pursue their studies better, and you should likewise help them when they are at the center. 1 to 2 hours while they are present should be sufficient for the time being, because they only stay for a short while.
Rose, Margaret, is usually there for several weeks, while Dorrit can remain for 1 to 2 days.
Then it would be advisable that you dedicate 1 hour per day for the study, because they do not have the opportunity in their actual residences to devote themselves collectively with other group members in detail to the study.
If you think so, then okay. Indeed, it means a lot more work, but I think that this arrangement is fair.
Then these issues are also discussed, so I will now address the last concern. For Madeline, we talked about her going back to meditation and that she should just a moment. Quetzal is calling me through the intercom.
I just had quite a scare.
That is quite clear to see, but look there, girl, the guy is grinning again. What is the matter with him?
1 moment, and he will tell us.
Quetzal visible on the communicator screen.
Like any other hiker, I was walking through the night to get to Manara. I had reached the high edge of the woods unchallenged, just several meters away from the pasture fence where Manara was waiting for me by the cows, when I was suddenly standing in the glare of 2 light-beam devices. Looking around, badly startled for a moment, I saw 2 auto headlights belonging to Engelbert's vehicle, as was determined by my analyzer. He must have observed me, despite the dark night, and thought that some stranger was roaming around who could possibly waylay our friend. That is my assumption.
Who Sneaks There at the Nightly Hour by Engelbert Wechter, Switzerland.
Successful surprise offensive with a flood of halogen light. Only for a moment did his gait falter. The absolute highlight in being together with Billy and all friends of the Free Interest Group for Frontier and Human Sciences and Ufology Studies, without whom I simply cannot imagine living on, was the direct visual contact with extraterrestrial human beings at a distance of less than 200 meters on Thursday evening, the 9th of October, 1980. Some of us from Hinterschmidt-Rutten sat at the kitchen table and discussed in an animated open-mindedness the prize offers that had been received for the new booklet Law of Love that was to be printed. A few fiddled with cooking pots and dishes on the table and cooker, making the whole kitchen and everything that moved in it unsafe, and still others turned the clean and hot water flowing from the tap into an unsightly, greasy broth by means of dirty dishes. So each of us was absorbed in some activity which brought full satisfaction to one of us, but at most elicited a satisfied from the other, the cooker or the dishwasher. They could not be blamed, for they too were longing for a well-deserved evening off, but dear duty called. At about 19:15 ARs, Bernadette rushed into the kitchen as if she had to escape from an army of mice. My type, together with the offers I had studied, was demanded quite urgently because of some comparisons by Billy. In the course of the next 10 minutes, we made the decision necessary for the matter. As a result, it did not escape my attention that Billy was already changing to exit during the business talk. Did he possibly have a contact? This unspoken question was immediately translated into answering reality, for looking around the living room as if searching, we heard him ask who might be driving him. Bernadette's eyes lit up hopefully, and she offered to chauffeur him, Billy, at any time, of course. But as if lost in thought, he seemed to have overheard her offer. So he turned to me. A joyful shrug ran through my chest, for it was also a great honor for me to drive our boss around in the night and fog, if possible. After the last preparations had been made, we, Billy and I, left home around 19:30 hours. Billy and I had often been with him during his contacts, and so I waited, driving at a moderate speed, for the directions that he received telepathically from Simya Se, and which he then passed on to the respective driver. Apart from the directions, there was little, usually no talking at all, and so not today. General direction to Blatt, Seland, so along the Unterland on initially good wide roads. Shortly before the buildings of Witwer AG Fertigbau in Saarland, we unexpectedly took a hard left uphill on a very narrow road. Shortly afterwards we passed a farm hamlet. The good Ford continued to struggle uphill, and its reliable purring was only interrupted by Billy's short directions. Right, left, straight ahead, right, etc. At about 1945 HRs, we reached a kind of high valley Sacklin, which, as I could just about make out in this cow night, bordered on the left and right on even darker forest edges. Our car headlights flitted ghostly over the bushes and along the little road, where the light then faded pale far ahead. Drive in here, Billy now made himself known in a really lively and enterprising manner. Yes, here, stop, can sweep straight. He had not said anything about parking, and so I made an effort to drive away again in the opposite direction. Stop, stop. Well, with Billy, you often do not know what your turn is, and so it can happen to a driver who is left in the dark that he does not know what to do or not to do. Automatically, I assumed that we had somehow got lost. It would not have been the first time, but we had not got lost, and destination XY had been reached. Elegantly as always, Billy swung himself out of the car and looked towards the forest, following the excited tinkling of a nearby cattle pasture. Glowing little lights became visible and disappeared again. Well, cows' eyes also glow at night. While I parked the car again in order to be able to drive away again without any problems at end of contact, Billy said goodbye briefly, but not before he had taken one more careful look at the stars, at his stars. Silently, he disappeared into the cloak of an ever-blackening night. I could still see him for a few meters, then I was alone. An almost eerie silence, interrupted only now and then by the now quieter tinkling of bells, enveloped me, and suddenly I also felt the cold that was now mercilessly reaching for me through my thin jacket. So I got back into the car, let the tape play, and got some warmth from the fan heater. Then I comfortably lit a cigarette, enjoyed it, and spied like a lynx for some pursuers. But nothing moved. About 30 minutes must have passed when I repeatedly got out of the car to stretch my freezing feet during the guard duty. Then, unexpectedly, I had the feeling that I had seen something flickering halfway down the road to the edge of the forest on my right. I now put my entire attention on high alert. I quickly hurried back to the car as quietly as I could and looked for the Russian throwing axe, among all the junk in the glove compartment. I placed it neatly within reach on my seat, left the door open with the lights off, and concentrated fully on the hot spot again. Sure enough, now I heard heavy footsteps rustling through the wet grass, which was about 20 centimeters high. To all appearances, these could only be the footsteps of a grown man. Every now and then, this strange light effect flickered on again. Now the sounds of footsteps became clearer, and they could be heard exactly as if two reapers were cutting the wet grass in an alternating pattern at some distance. And the light reflections were also now more visible in the light of the stars. My heart warmed at the thought that, but this cannot possibly be. How do I come up with such impossible trains of thought? And where does this strange, peaceful feeling come from? Is it after all? Strangely enough, I felt absolutely not the slightest uneasiness or the incorruptible feeling of danger. So it could not mean danger for Billy or for me. Oh, well, this will be the farmer who wants to check on his cattle. But this peculiar rain gear? Strange. And at this time of day? Cautiously, I checked the position of my weapon once more, while the brisk footsteps were dragging along near the edge of the forest. Just wait, Bumpkin. I want to give you a good scare. Suddenly I realized that the halogen headlights at this relatively short distance were quite capable of suddenly bathing a night bird like this in the brightest light. I quickly checked the direction of the car in order to determine the time of the floodlight surprise, and took a quick look in the direction of the night person. This happened in seconds of maximum tension. Gently, I sat down behind the dashboard. Another look through the windscreen. Could I even see him through this glass? You bet I could see him. Just then it flickered open again. Wonderful how this unsuspecting bird fell into my light trap. Only a few more meters. Feverishly I groped for the ignition lock. Key in. Without turning on the ignition key, nothing is possible with the halogen light. Closer and closer, the glimmering man pushed towards the target point I had set. A few more seconds. The ignition key had already become warm and damp. Now, by turning the ignition lock and simultaneously tilting the halogen light switch forward, I gave the abundance of light fire at will. A broad beam of white light flooded around a man clad in a silvery flashing cape. Only briefly did his gait falter. 2, 3 more steps, and he had reached the darkness line. Gone, and this is supposed to be a farmer. I quickly revved up the engine, put it in gear, turned the car down a little so that I could see this apparition in the headlights again. I was just able to watch the man retreat into the forest. Some branches were still cracking. The spitting was over. After only a few minutes, Billy stood in front of me as if he had grown out of the ground, grinning at me merrily and surprising me by asking if I always wanted to scare harmless hikers. If I had not had a neck, the bottom of my chewers would certainly have dropped a little lower. When I asked him how he knew, he just smirked, and I for one did not know what to think anymore. Now Billy turned to me, resuming the conversation. Do you really have no idea who you scared so badly? Of course, I had a sneaking suspicion. But knowing the tremendous caution of our friends in moving about our planet, I dared not comment. I too have become very cautious in making statements, and especially in relation to our friends, for how easily could it was our friend Quetzal. He, Billy, had followed the situation report on the screen.
1/3 contact excerpt, Thursday, 9th October 1980, 1944 HRs.
And that they are one moment. Quetzal is calling me through the intercom.
I was really scared just now.
You can also see it in his face. But look, girl, the little boy is grinning again. What's the matter with him?
Just a moment. He will tell you in a minute.
Is visible on the intercom screen.
So I walked through the night like a normal walker to get to Manara. Unchallenged, I made it up to the edge of the forest. Only a few meters from the pasture fence where Manara was waiting for me by the cows, when suddenly I found myself standing in a flood of light from 2 light beam devices. Looking around and momentarily startled, I saw that they were 2 car headlights belonging to Engelbert's vehicle, as I had just realized through my analyzers. He must have been watching me in spite of the dark night and thought that someone foreign was going around, perhaps to ambush our friend. This is my assumption.
Quetzal, did you not take off your shiny silver cloak?
No, my friend, I did not think it was necessary, because the darkness did not let me assume that Engelbert could watch and see me.
Then you were thinking a little too little, my son.
That is of correctness. I will be more careful some other time.
Well, the world will not end because of that. And Engelbert must have enjoyed you running into his hammer. Even though he probably did not want to, because he could not know that it was you, and therefore not just a lousy night owl or any other earthling.
Of course not, and I also do not feel attacked or otherwise threatened in my security because of that. It was simply the momentary fright that made me feel insecure. Anyway, you should make the facts clear to him and give him my regards. Goodbye.
Take care, he's got it pretty bad. I would have liked to see his face.
That would certainly have looked quite fun.
It must have been well over 100 meters when Quetzal ran into the cone of light. I do not understand why he did that at all. And can anything at all happen to you at this distance through the swinging waves of the Earthlings? As far as I know, you can come within 90 or 100 meters of the human beings without being exposed to any vibrational dangers.
The last part of your statement corresponds to correctness. But in the second part, you make a mistake in thinking. Quetzal certainly did not run into an already existing wall of light, but must have been suddenly caught by one in the middle of the darkness. While we were now driving off to turn off the side road onto our home course, the halogen headlight streaked along the edge of the forest with almost indecent brightness and bathed Quetzal, who had in the meantime arrived at Manara, a dark-skinned beauty, in bright light once more. Standing peacefully side by side at the pasture, they disappeared from the circle of light of our homeward-bound carriage into the darkness. Dear readers, there are not enough colors to paint my feelings for such an experience.
135th Contact, Thursday, 9th of October 1980, 1944 Sri.
Quetzal, did you not pull off your silvery shining cloak?
No, my friend, I did not find it necessary, as I assumed that Engelbert could not observe or see me in the darkness.
Then you thought too little too late, my son.
That is of correctness. On the next occasion, I shall take better care.
Well, the world is not going to end because of that either. And Engelbert must have enjoyed it that you ran into his hammer, even though he probably did not want to, because he could not know that it was you, and therefore not just a lousy night owl or any other earthling.
Certainly not, and that is why I did not feel assaulted or otherwise threatened. It was simply a momentary scare which made me uncertain. In any case, you should explain the facts to him and extend to him my greetings. Goodbye.
Take care. It really got to him. I would have liked to have seen his face.
That surely would have been quite a funny sight.
Quetzal must have been over 100 meters away when he ran into the headlight beam. Why he did that at all is still not clear to me. And can anything happen to you from the swinging waves of the Earthlings at this distance? According to my knowledge, you can come within 90 or 100 meters of the Earth humans without protective equipment and not expose yourselves to any type of swinging wave danger.
The last part of your assessment is correct, but in the second part, you made a mistake in your reasoning. Quetzal, with certainty, did not run into a beam of light from a headlight, but must have suddenly been caught by it in the midst of the darkness.
Ah, of course. Slowly I seem to become stupid and therefore illogical. But before I forget, our financial situation at the center is rather precarious. Which is why I wanted to ask you whether you have already thought about this because we talked about it before, and whether you have found a solution.
Certainly we have, and everything has also been found to be good by the High Council. The solution is that some of the residents of the center or the group members residing there occasionally should go out to work for a full day or for half of a day in order to acquire the necessary missing financial means.
And who should this be? And how should this look more precisely?
Our investigations and inquiries revealed that Madeline and also Jacobus and Elsie could work for a full day. And this would be the responsibility of Jacobus and Elsie for about 22 years, and of Madeline for at least 18 years. Ava, as we have found, could devote herself to part-time employment, which she should carry out at the center, and this would also apply to your wife. It would be for them to see if they could perform any profitable work at the center. Infants and adolescents need their mothers throughout the whole day.
That would be homework, as we call it. We have already thought of this, and besides, we have already done a lot in this respect, even to the point that we could carry out this work in such a way that nobody would have to work outside anymore.
That is a very commendable initiative, but it probably cannot be realized so quickly that the financial problems would be solved within the necessary interval. For this reason, your wife and Eva should, from now on, assume a work that is acceptable to them, which they could perform at the center, while Madeline, Jacobus, and Elsie, from the month of November, should be able to perform a full day of outside work. The work that is to be done in the center, which falls within the scope and competence of Jacobus, should, in the future, be completed by all available group members on Saturdays, so that problems of this kind would likewise be resolved.
I suppose, however, that Elsie will rebel against this because she will say that she is only being used, or that someone wants to exploit her.
Those are not logical words, but she should indeed become enlightened in the meantime.
I doubt it, unfortunately.
Let her decide. She should find the logic, necessity, and correctness of our advice. Still, I wanted to talk earlier about Madeline regarding the meditation. The period specified for her has expired, but she has not yet clearly decided, which is why you should suggest this to her again.
I will.
Good. Then you must, unfortunately, consider the conversation for today as being concluded because I am actually pressed for time. Until we meet again, my friend, and see you soon.
Then take care, and really come again quite soon.
I will. Farewell.